Okay, this meeting is being recorded. Welcome, everyone. This is Paul Graff from Remax Elite Brokers in Snohomish, Washington. This is the Sound Moves podcast about real estate in the Puget Sound region and sound advice for your life. This is my video series where I interview referral partners around the country. Typically, I interview real estate agents, but today I'm introducing you to somebody else. I want you to introduce you to a lender who may be able to help where other lenders can't. So I'm introducing you today to John Grace, who is a lender with Seal Rock Endeavors based in Minneapolis. We originally met through BNI, and John has been in the lending business for more than 30 years, but just started Seal Rock recently. So John, welcome. Why don't you give us a brief background of who you are, where you grew up, and what other jobs you have had in the past?
Well, I grew up in Southern California. I actually grew up in a small beach town called San Clemente. And that's going to come back into play as we kind of talk about Seal Rock and everything else.
Nice.
I went to school in Los Angeles. I went to grad school at the University of Chicago, where I got my MBA. And I spent most of my career in New York City. I worked in New York for about 25 years. Then I moved back. And while I was in New York, I worked with JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup. I was at AIG during the financial crisis. And since then, I've had a couple of C-suite roles with mid-sized institutions. And then about 2 years ago, I started consulting.
Okay, nice. And then what got you started in lending to begin with? I mean, did you have an interest in that as a kid?
I never thought I would be a banker as a kid. Not many kids grow up wanting to be a banker. But I was always fascinated by the economics of it, the math. You know, I'm a geek. Let's be clear. So I've always been interested in finance and how we move money around and how money can help people do the things they want to do. It's kind of the lubricant of the modern economy.
Nice. So as I mentioned earlier, our first connection was through BNI, Business Networking International. We met on a speed networking call a couple months ago, I guess. So what do you like about BNI and how has that helped your business?
What I like about BNI is I belong to a virtual chapter up here in Minnesota. So obviously most of the participants are up here in Minnesota, but Minnesota is a big state. You know, there are people up in Duluth and north of here. But you also get to meet people from around the country. And having spent so much of my career working in places other than where I live, that's very nice. So, you know, our specific chapter has members from Massachusetts and Florida, but I also get to visit chapters from all over the country.
Nice. Cool. So as a lender, what does Seal Rock offer that other lenders do not?
Well, this kind of goes back to what I've observed in the last 15 to 18 months. As a consultant, I was consulting, not surprisingly, with banks. And I saw that banks, and the bankers told me this, that they were cutting back on lending. And it was for several reasons. The regulatory rules changed, particularly after the failure of Silicon Valley Bank last March. So it's just been about a year. And banks don't have the capital and liquidity they need to lend to customers. They're also, if banks have any exposure to commercial real estate, particularly office real estate, they're putting money in their loan loss reserves. So they don't have as much money as they used to, and therefore they're allocating it only to their biggest and best clients, which left out small and medium-sized businesses, commercial real estate, and investment properties. And I, over the years, have built up a large network.
Nice.
You know, I've had a lot of coffee, a lot of cocktails, a lot of lunches and dinners, and I've got a network of about 3 dozen or so non-bank lenders. And these lenders are more receptive to different types of borrowers. So if you have any
Uh-huh.
scratches or dings on your credit record, they're open to that, whereas banks today are
Okay.
not. And they also look at different projects that banks will not look at.
Hmm. Interesting. I know
And
I do a good chunk of my work on the commercial side in real estate, and oftentimes it's a problem finding people to finance some of the deals I'm working on. So you've been a fantastic connection to me recently.
well, that's kind of
um,
what we want to do.
yeah,
So, and the other advantage
very
of
cool.
these lenders is they're quicker than banks. They're not hampered by
Nice.
the same regulations that banks have. And so not only do they have
Very
what
good.
we call a broader risk appetite, but they also have speed on their side as well.
Okay. Well, those are good too, because commercial deals often take a long time. So
Yeah.
wherever we can find a way to speed it up, the better. So today is March 4th, and this happens to be the Fun Facts About Names Day, one of the things that's celebrated on the 4th of March. So why don't you give us a bit of background into how you came up with Seal Rock Endeavors as a name for your practice?
Well, if I lean back, you can see Seal Rock itself. Now, this is a rock
Nice.
outcropping about, a mile or so offshore from the beaches I grew up on.
Uh-huh.
And as a kid, we noticed that whenever the rock got crowded with sea lions, uh, we knew the weather was getting rough. What we did not know at the time was sea lions also got on the rock when there were predators out there, like great white sharks. And of course,
Okay.
we were kind
Nice.
of oblivious to the fact that, and I had a lot of friends who used to paddle out on their surfboards to Seal Rock, worried more about a seal biting them or a sea lion biting them than a shark. But I think the idea of Seal Rock, and this kind of comes back to what I've talked about, it's kind of a safe place to be when things get
Okay.
rough.
Nice. That's a very important feeling in finance. So
It's very important. I've been through a lot of times where things were not safe in finance.
yeah.
And so, you know, that's a feeling I want to help bring to others, that sense of safety and security and
That's cool.
stability.
I like that. Now, you're based in Minnesota, but you can serve anybody in the country, correct?
All 50 states.
Nice. And then, who are your ideal clients? Like,
Well,
if
I
I were
think,
to refer somebody to you, I know I gave one guy to you already, but who else? Who else? Is an
well,
easy
I
client for
think
you to work with?
there are really three types of customers I'm interested in. The
Okay.
first are the small and medium businesses who can't get funding from banks.
Okay.
And they can want funding because they want to grow their business, like the customer you gave me, or they need funding to help resolve some business issues. And I can talk about a little bit about that later on.
Okay.
The second group are people buying commercial real estate or investors in real estate. So
Okay.
that's the second group. And I think, you know, both small and medium businesses, commercial real estate, and property investors are all being underserved by the banking environment.
Nice.
Ironically, the third group I'm looking to connect with are the bankers themselves.
Okay.
Because when a banker says no, well, let's be clear, the customer usually walks across the street, try and get another loan. And when they do,
Okay.
they take all of their business, their deposits, their treasury and cash management, any investment accounts they might have. And that's really hard on the bankers because they want to keep those, they want to keep the deposits for the liquidity, and they want to keep all those other accounts for the fees. So when they
Uh-huh.
can't provide credit, they put everything at risk. So I think the whole idea is I can help the bankers help their customers and then help them keep the rest of the relationship. So it becomes a win-win for the banker and a win-win for the
Nice.
customer. I'm not really
Very, very cool.
competing. I'm not competing with the banks. I'm complementary to them.
Which is good. So, yeah, I like that working with somebody else.
Mhm.
So, as opposed to always working against somebody, that's kind of
Well,
nice.
I've been a banker. These are my people.
Yeah, you don't want to trash them. So, very good. So, what are some great successes you might be able to share with our audience today?
Well, we have two underway right now. The second is, the first one is a small business here in the Twin Cities. And the owner of the business ended up getting in over her head. She has about $250,000 worth of debt. The problem is that there are some unscrupulous lenders out there, and they're currently charging her about $11,000 a week.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And it's obviously just not only killing her business, it's killing her with all that pressure.
Yeah.
So we're helping her restructure her debt, and hopefully by this afternoon, we might have some good news in terms of really restructuring debt, relieving the pressure on her, and being able to move forward.
Nice. So she can focus more on the business and
Exactly.
making it
And
profitable. Yeah.
let
Nice.
a loan do what it's supposed to do, which is support the business rather than sucking the life out of it.
Okay.
The second example is there's a business here in Minnesota. It's a transportation business, and the owner is looking to buy the facility where he's currently leasing. It's a nice facility, a lot of parking for his transportation vehicles, big open garage to maintain those vehicles. He had been working with some of the local banks around here. And remember when I talked about speed? Well, he'd been working with one bank, and it had taken, after about 10 months, they still had not reached a resolution. And I think sometime, maybe as soon as today, we'll get a proposal letter after about 2 weeks worth of work.
Wow.
For the loan.
Okay.
And
Very
it's,
nice.
it's a large multi-million-dollar deal.
Nice. So, before we go, what are some favorite books or movies or quotes that you've had that have kind of inspired you and kept you going in this career?
Well, actually, one of my favorite books, and I've read it several times, are the memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay, nice.
And it talks about his journey up to the end of the Civil War.
Uh-huh.
And, he had a lot of setbacks in his life. And then he had the resolve to keep moving forward and eventually be, frankly, the best general in the Civil War because he finally won it. He came up with a strategy, but it was his clarity of thought. Coincidentally, apparently West Point still teaches how to write orders based on how he did it because they were simple and clear. And he had a strategy that encompassed the entire continent, frankly, on how to win the war. And he was a devoted family man and everything else, just a remarkable man.
Interesting.
So that's a book I maybe read it once a decade.
Okay.
Nice.
And
oh, by the way, it doesn't hurt that Mark Twain helped bring the book to conclusion as well. So.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
He was a big supporter of Grant and a good friend, and he helped Grant earn enough money because he was dying of cancer at the time to enable his family to live comfortably after his death.
Those are stories you never hear growing up. That's so cool.
No, it's a remarkably cool story.
Yeah.
On the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, my favorite movie is The Godfather.
Okay, nice.
And I watch that every couple of years as well. And I was watching it about 2 years ago, trying to pick out if there were any flaws in it. I was really looking at it with a skeptical, cynical eye, and I couldn't find anything. It's just a remarkable story, a real piece of art, well crafted by Coppola and all the writers and actors.
Interesting. Very cool. That is a good movie. So where can people go to find you?
I've got one other thing.
Oh, go ahead.
What's my favorite quote? And this is from a man named Nick DeLeonardis, who was my mentor when I was a young analyst in Chicago. He was the treasurer of ABN LaSalle. He'd come out of retirement because his friend had gotten the job as the president of ABN LaSalle. And he told Nick, come on, I need you. So Nick came out of retirement. And one day, it was a typical day in the markets.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the market was crashing. All the screens were flashing red, and I was kind of standing in the trade room, probably looking a little ashen at the time.
Okay.
And he walked up to me and looked at the screens and looked at me and screens, looked at me, and he finally said, if we keep our heads, we'll be fine. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about with Grant. You just have to find that moment of stillness and allow yourself to think.
Wow. That's
So
super important,
Grant,
because you get caught
Coppola,
up
and
in
Nick.
the pressure and the tension, you
Yeah.
start making decisions that aren't good. So
Yeah, exactly. And so you've got Grant, you've got Coppola, and you've got Nick DeLeonardis.
nice. Very cool. So where can people go to find you in your business?
Well, my website is Seal Rock Endeavors, and that is SEAL, like the seal, Rock, ROCK, Endeavors, and that's ENDEAVORS.com. Seal Rock Endeavors, that's the website. I'm putting a new one up probably, it's functional today, but a new one is going up in about 10 days.
Okay, nice.
You can reach me either by email, which is John Grace, JOHNGRACE at sealrockendeavors.com.
Okay.
Or you can call me, 612-440-6673.
Excellent. And then on social media, you're on LinkedIn.
I'm on LinkedIn. I have my own LinkedIn profile from my days as a professional. I'm getting a Seal Rock LinkedIn site, but that's still underway.
Okay, nice.
We're going to put up a Facebook site. So, I've only been doing Seal Rock for not quite, maybe 3.5 months.
Okay.
But we're already getting a good response to it because the gap in the market that I saw is real.
Yeah.
And people are looking for funding.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I mentioned you when we first had our first video call a couple months ago. Like, this is something I've been looking for years. Somebody who can help my commercial clients get the products they need.
Yeah,
So,
and this problem has been happening with the banks for a long time, but it's particularly gotten worse in the last 15 months.
Yeah.
And it's not to blame the banks. They're doing the best they can under the circumstances. It's just the regulatory environment, it's the economic environment, which, while is positive, does put a lot of pressure on banks because of some of the loan decisions they've made in past years.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thank you, John, so much for being a part of this today. It's so good to sit down and chat with you and share your story with my audience, and hopefully connect you with some other small businesses looking for funding that they haven't been able to get yet.
I would like it. And with Seal Rock behind me, I just want to say, jump in, the water's fine. And we'll keep you away from the
That is so cool. So thank you so much, John, for today. And I appreciate you. Have a fantastic rest of your week.
You too. Enjoy the start of your week, Paul.